Welcome to Transforming Us podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tamara. We're trauma-informed relationship coaches and old friends here to discuss common patterns and what leads us to paths of security.
You know, people are feeling overwhelmed and disconnected in their painful relationships, which often leads to mental health crises.
We want to share some new ideas and practices to help you cultivate curiosity, compassion, and to redeem the patterns in your relationships, starting with yourself.
Join us on this journey of transforming us. Grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to be back here with my good friend Tamara, and we are discussing a topic that is just near and dear to my heart. Something we often talk about is how to find our paths to security. And there's so many different ways to do that with Enneagram and attachment. So, how you doing?
I am doing good. I'm just enjoying this fall weather. It's just beautiful. So I feel like it's like you have to kind of bottle it all up and enjoy it while it's here because it goes so fast. But I'm trying to spend as much time as I can outside.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, same. I think that the shift from the hot weather to now just the crisp, cool, the feeling of walking outside and the leaves falling and being able to walk without sweating.
Yes.
And just being in nature it's just this shift and the change of a season is really good for perspective. It's good for the soul. I love being with my family outside in the fall and, visiting a apple orchard or going on a drive even. It's just new. Everything's new because it's changed a little bit.
Yes. So refreshing. Well, I'm so excited about today's topic. We are going to be diving into something that's at the core of the work that we do. And it's going to be basically talking about finding security and wholeness. So,
Yeah. So as we dig into this idea of paths to security, we all want to feel secure, right? You know, I know that the word, when you type in security in a Google search, nothing comes up other than home security or technology security and things like that. And, way down on the line is attachment security. So, it's not the first thing that people think about when they think of the word security, but it just means like you feel safe and in control of your own emotional states and, how you are in relationships. That's what attachment security feels like. It's an at-home place. And you're not worried about threats, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it feels like a really balanced state that we all want, just that just right temperature. You think of the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, but just this, just feeling good. And it also reminds me of our nervous system. So Dr. Dan Siegel talks a lot about the window of tolerance. He shared a lot of information on attachment theory. And this just right zone, not too hot, not too cold, is your window of tolerance where you can handle life's ups and downs and you don't get quite as overwhelmed. And when you do, you can come back into feeling regulated again. So chaos looks a little bit different when you have that window of tolerance. So when we're too hot, in what we would call a state of hyperarousal, what would you say is happening?
Well, I feel like in that state, that's really where we're going to start feeling very anxious. We're going to feel it in our body. We're going to feel, our hearts can be racing. We can be having very spiraling thoughts. We can feel on edge. We can have, maybe like a shortness of breath. This is just our nervous system's way of saying, something's wrong. I don't feel safe. There's danger. It's just this, kind of puts you in this fight or flight kind of response. So that's how I would describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good way of describing it. I heard, so we had a recent podcast with Dr. Chuck DeGroat, and he talked about storm and fog. And so that storm is your hyperarousal. So I like that metaphor also.
Mm-hmm.
So what about hypoarousal? Tell me what that's like, or that cold, too cold state.
Mm-hmm. So hypoarousal would be more when we would fall into more of an avoidance state. Feelings that we could have, we could feel numb. We could feel like, okay, this is too much. I'm just feeling myself shut down. I feel disconnected. It's like our system is saying, just this is too much. And I just feel the need to check out. And both of these states really pull us away from what we would hope to have, this secure, regulated place where we feel like, stabilized. So the good news, though, is that we can learn to build somatic awareness. And, if people aren't familiar, that's just like somatic is in like our body, listening to our body's responses, and just starting to notice what's happening inside of our body. And there's just simple practices like just focusing on breath work. We can, feeling our feet on the ground, can just there's other tools and things we can share with you, but those are just some basic things that kind of help us gently guide ourselves back into that window of what
Mm-hmm.
feels like, stable tolerance. And it's not about never leaving it. It's just about having the tools to be able to return.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. We go up and we go down and we go in and out of regulation all the time because we're just so very human, and
Right.
we have needs. And sometimes when you get dysregulated, it's just a signal, okay, something's off. I need to listen to this information and figure out what it is that needs to change so that I can feel that at home state or that just right state again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about in my own life, and we were actually just, you and I went for a walk and we're talking about the differences in these two states and like how you can grow in your capacity and your energy can come back to that feeling regulated again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I tend to run really fast and feel very overwhelmed and feel like there's a lot of urgency going on in my day to day recently. I obviously go up and down, but when I feel like my thoughts are racing or it's harder to breathe, and that pressured feeling is that too hot or storm feeling. I know that slowing down and slowing my breathing, and like you said, that somatic awareness of being able to observe what I'm really feeling and not just the racing thoughts, and get curious about what might help me feel more calm. Am I pressuring myself to get things done really quickly when there's really no deadlines? Or am I, feeling like I'm going to upset somebody by not answering their email right away, you know? And is that
Yeah.
really even true? Like some of that stuff comes from that too hot, sympathetic, hyper arousal state.
Yeah.
And it's not good for me to stay there for very long. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to just remind myself of the truth that I am safe and I have control of my life and I can choose how fast or slow I want to do things, and make those discerning choices not based on fear.
Right.
So yeah, do you want to share a little bit about the other side of things, like anything you might have experienced recently?
I think just, kind of in falling in line with what you're saying, I think when I will feel, that panicking feeling or thought, my thoughts spiraling or just the anxiety in my chest,
Mm-hmm.
it's like those feelings are there. It's signaling something to me. So it's like learning to like stop and figure out, you know, like our feelings are indicators that something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, I think just self-talk, like I think understanding why, like what this is, kind of getting to the root of what this feeling is, and, being able to talk through it. I'm a verbal processor, so that helps me
Mm-hmm.
um, talk with someone and kind of, yeah, figure out my thoughts and self-regulate. And then, could be just like going for a walk, taking time to just reflect back on like prayer and just like,
Mm-hmm.
these are anxious thoughts that I'm having because I'm fearing something that could be future focused or future
Mm-hmm.
based, and I don't even have control of that. So I'm spiraling, and it's really not even in my control, because so much of illusion is, the control we think we have when we really don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that I have to kind of just talk myself off that ledge and just repeat in my mind what I know is true.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody feels different, of what can help them. If you're not a verbal processor and you're more inward, then, the way that you go about it may be different than how I would. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, sometimes if you tend towards more of that anxious side and being in hyperarousal, that you can only be there for so long. So if you don't get into your window of tolerance or become more regulated, sometimes you'll dip down then into the too cold or the hypoarousal state. And what that feels like is this like foggy, like less energy. I don't really want to do anything. I don't have that zest for life. There's a lot of energy that goes with the sympathetic state. And so you might feel anxious or pressured, but there's life, there's movement, there's things happening. Um, but when you realize you actually don't have control, and that's a good thing to know that you don't have control over everything, but sometimes that can kind of make people feel more depressive or just like, what's the point? And that's
Right.
that too cold state. Then you don't
Hmm.
really want to be there either
Right.
for too
Yeah.
long,
Both
you know?
don't feel good being in them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we've talked recently about just the experiences of others that we're close to when they're going through really hard things, like very
Hmm.
challenging things, like some of our teens and stuff, the things that they face and deal with, just even listening and being there for them can feel so heavy.
Right.
And we don't have any control over it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot about our system. And I think it's a good framework to get started into this conversation of paths to security, because the first path being that we need to recognize our state and move towards the at home state, that just right zone, the window of tolerance,
Hmm.
so remembering that with all of these other patterns is part of growing insecurity, is noticing our system. So then
Yep.
we'd like to also talk about the wisdom of our instincts. Okay, so our instincts are these God-given mechanisms inside of ourselves, and it is to keep us safe. They're wired into us so that if there's a threat or there's a dangerous situation, we know how to get our needs met. And so there's self-preserving, social, and one-to-one. Okay, so these are foundational drives for security. Tamara, can you break down the three main instincts so that we can understand them a little bit better?
Yeah, of course. So the first instinct would be self-preservation, and this is what you're gonna, kind of think about basic stuff like basic needs, like your food, shelter, health. It's just the drive that overall you're gonna want to feel secure in your own body and in your world and your space.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the social instinct, and that is going to be the drive for belonging and connection. So relationships are going to be of big importance for the social. It's about feeling safe within a group. An imbalance here, though, could actually mean that you either overly conform to be able to fit in, or you just completely withdraw from social situations.
Okay.
Um, and then there's the one to one. And that is going to be the drive for more intense connection. They love intimacy, the feeling of being very connected. It's about feeling alive, about feeling safe in a close relationship. And so when this is out of balance, people that are one-to-one might become overly dependent on one key relationship for their sense of security. So they might, avoid true intimacy altogether. They might do that too. The key, though, is to just recognize your instinctual stacking. So the order in which you prioritize these, and then consciously work on bringing your least developed instinct into balance. And that is going to just be a journey of recognizing that true security does require a balanced approach to all three. And,
Mm.
and we've talked about, recently just about how, as you grow and you become more secure, as you mature, those instincts can shift.
Mhm.
So we're not always exactly the same as
Yeah.
we evolve as people.
Yeah, that's so true and really helpful to remember that as we do like Enneagram and attachment work is these instincts can pair with our Enneagram number to influence what type of a 3 or a 4 or a 9 we
Mm-hmm.
present as. And
Right.
so it just gives one more layer of information or a pattern for how people can become insecure, which
Mm-hmm.
in as you defined is becoming overly dependent on one instinct and not really using the others. Um, so like for instance, if a self-preserving dominant person is not really utilizing their other instincts, they're going to be really kind of focused on control and overly focused maybe on their health. There could be an aspect of fear and like grasping in their own personal life and avoiding more maybe social situations or finding support from a social group or one-to-one relationships. They might just be only focused on just withdrawing and taking time to themselves and taking care of their own basic needs or the needs of just those in their immediate family. That's an example of being disintegrated. You know,
Yeah.
integration is the sequence being balanced and each instinct being used appropriately. And often, and that
Right.
maturity as we learn in life and we grow in our resources to become healthier adults, like that's what naturally happens, even if people don't know about these instincts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, so it's really cool to help people see the needs for all three. And we've mentioned in a past episode Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how we have it reflects these instincts perfectly. The need for food, water, shelter, safety is at the bottom, and it's the greatest need, honestly,
Right.
just for sustaining life and
Right.
protecting ourselves. Um, and then there's the love and belonging. So you have your one to
Mm-hmm.
one, and then is kind of just the social impact and purpose and some of those types of things.
Right.
Um, so really, really good to focus on those things. So let's talk personally in our own patterns, what that looks like, what our journey through integration of instincts has looked like. What
Me
would you
go
say for
first.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, looking back as a teen and in my 20s, I was definitely more social instinct. So it was very much about, like I just had a very high drive for success, more of how I was presenting, um, very high drive to just prove myself. And it's just funny because I can look back in my earlier jobs when I was in sales and, like it was, you know, even just starting businesses, like it was just, I had this vision and this goal and I'm going to reach it. It's just a matter of time how I get there. There really wasn't fear about it. It just was like, I'm going to figure this out. And that was like very, very important to me. I could say, I think I was a little bit like not ever a workaholic, but just like that was just very important to me to like prove myself. Whereas now, I think motherhood really changed me. I think it, kind of took the focus more off of my self because, before you have kids, you're just living and you have to take care of yourself. And so I think motherhood shifted that for me, where my focus was more on my children and just my family and people around me. I think, reaching success and, hitting these goals, you get there and you're like, it's very validating, but yet you also realize like, huh, like that's not all that it's about in life. Like
Mm,
it just kind of changed my perspective. And I think obviously like growing in my faith over the years, it just became less like self-focused and more like seeing life from a different perspective. It's not about me, like
mhm.
it's about how am I living other people? How am I, like, my purpose? How am I living my life? How am I choosing to spend my days? How am I, it just wasn't about so much the focus of me anymore.
Yeah.
So now I would say I definitely become more self preserving. Like I'm fine to not feel like I'm the center of attention, whereas like a social, like a young, more immature social would feel. And,
Mhm.
it's funny, I was sharing with, you earlier, but, I used to have no problem like getting on the stage. I was an only child. I was wanting to be an actress. I thought about being a news anchor. Like I liked being in the attention of people and around people and the activity and the flurry of all of that. And whereas now I'm fine with just
Yeah.
living a more like, just
Yeah.
like life that's not as like I don't need that validation and attention like I would have when I was younger and more
Yeah.
immature.
Yeah, and also too, I know, your husband's a very social type. And
Hmm.
so there's a natural balance in a family where if you have two social people, when parenting and life kind of catches up, someone probably needs to grow quickly in that self-preserving. And I think he probably has grown in his self-preserving too, but it's just there's a natural need to balance those things because
Hmm.
you can't be primarily driven by that social instinct on both sides and then still have balance in your family and
Right.
just the needs and the demands of self-care and all that stuff. So those are all
Hmm.
self-preserving
Hmm.
qualities. But yeah.
Yeah. How about you? How do you feel like your instincts have shifted, or do you feel like they've shifted?
Yeah, I do definitely think there's been changes. I've always came from a pretty self-pres dominant home where, order and control and having a plan and, taking care of your own personal needs, um, over signing up to, you know, go do a bunch of stuff with a group would have been the priority in my home. So I was really raised in that environment, and I think that can influence your instincts. Um, but early in marriage, I think I was really enjoying the social freedoms of just kind of being out of kind of that the tone of maybe what our family was used to in my family of origin. And so Travis and I were highly social. And so I think I was for part of my 20s really you know driven by service and hosting things and being leading groups and just I think I got to a place where because we both had that type of energy, was worn out, honestly, and was neglecting a lot of my own needs. And there was this progressive growing in understanding it's not selfish to take care of myself and to go spend time by myself and not always being with people or always helping. I think even the one to one was pretty high in that time, always sitting with someone and listening to what they're going through, which I loved, but it's exhausting when you're doing that type of thing all the time and you don't let yourself withdraw. And as a
Hmm.
four, I have a natural need to kind of withdraw and take time by myself, but I wasn't really listening to that need. So I say now in the last 10 years, my self-preserving's real high. Almost, and it got almost to the point of like, okay, I'm only self-preserving.
Yeah.
And have then found through the Enneagram balance to say like, okay, when I am taking care of my needs and I feel regulated and calm, I have the capacity to serve others, to meet with people one-on-one. And social probably takes the most energy from me now.
Hmm.
I don't think I'll ever get back to where I was in my 20s as far as
Yeah.
social. But I think it's a good balance because I like to challenge myself to still go participate in something social, even though it's the least comfortable for me
Hmm.
now. But I know how valuable it is to balance all three.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think another topic as we explore these different paths to security would be through the Enneagram. Each number has wings. So a wing for each Enneagram number is really just the number that's to the right and to the left on the circle. And so I like to talk about all the numbers as resources for integration. So, learning to adopt some of the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of the number to your right and the number to the left
Hmm.
is part of how we grow. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think thinking of the Enneagram type, as your core, and then, the wings are going to be, the wings. They're going to just kind of help you fly straight. It helps create more balance. So, like when we're not just focused on one wing, we're trying to only fly with one wing. So,
Hmm.
that is one way to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. It creates insecurity and a lack of balance if we are either not using our wings at all or we're using one heavily and neglecting the other. We're going to be kind of not really flying straight, like you said. So for a type 9, their wings are 8 and 1. They might lean heavily on 8 wing and become more assertive and direct, which is different for a 9, but I love seeing 9 wing 8s. They're
Hmm.
great. Um, but if they neglect their one wing, they might struggle with integrity or self-discipline or order.
Right.
The goal is to develop both so you can draw on the strengths of each. Each wing
Hmm.
has some secure qualities that their number does not have. So
Hmm.
that's the focus here is if it's a path to security, we're looking at the secure qualities of each number that you can use as resources.
And, it can feel like one wing is easier to lean into.
Hmm.
It's usually that one is going to feel just more comfortable and more familiar. It might be the path of, just feels like the path of least resistance. But true growth does come from consciously developing the less dominant wing, or like, to say, it helps us just kind of be more well rounded. It's about integrating the best of both sides to become more whole and more balanced in your personhood.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that, you know, as a 4, in my early years, I resonate a lot with what you talked about, the 3 wing was my dominant, more downhill, easy flowing, option for me. I
Hmm.
liked attention, I liked producing and performing, and I was definitely a 4, very emotional and sensitive, but there was a bit of the spotlight that I really, really liked. And getting to show people what I've made or created was part of that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it was just maybe later in life developing the 5 wing secure qualities, of just investigating things and using my mind and my thoughts in a way that I get to explore this castle of the mind and just create things just for myself. I would say my younger years, I didn't really know what it was like to use the qualities of the 5. I was just very
Yeah.
social.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
which
this is where, Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I can talk about the next part, but I didn't know if you wanted to share on your side, resonate with any of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how I would say I've changed though with the Enneagram. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we
Just
don't
like
have to. I
changing?
can just go into the next part. The
Yeah, just go ahead. I mean, I could share some if I need to, but
Okay. Okay,
just
so I'd
share.
love to It's okay. So talking about the kind of uphill and downhill experience more specifically, emphasis that each number has a combined 7 unique paths when you look at the instincts, wings, and arrows. So each number would have, they'd have their paths with the arrows um, and the instincts and the wings. And so there's just all these options, which makes it so hopeful that
Mhm.
you can find ways that are comfortable for you to explore new ways of being instead of just being locked into your patterns. So we can't really go through every single number here today. We're going to have episodes that are specific to numbers or go through each number one at a time. This episode is really just focused on what are these paths and how do we use them. So then exploring that on your own with your patterns or with a coach or something like that. Um, so we can work one-on-one with you if you and your partner need help pinpointing some of these unique, pain points or where, insecurities are showing up. That's something that you can always reach out to us, and we can help you with that. But that uphill and downhill is really important to just think about when you are exploring your wings, is knowing some Enneagram teachers will be like, oh, you just got to figure out find your wing, right?
Mhm.
Your dominant wing. Well, you can pinpoint the patterns of your dominant wing, but if you just stop there, and if I were to just say I'm a 4-wing 3, that would tell people where I'm at now. It wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with growing or healing or changing. Okay.
So the next topic is going to be the arrows, and the arrows are what are going to help show our path of growth and our path of stress. So, we can basically look at the Enneagram. It's not just this static map. It is just this really very interesting dynamic journey, because each type is going to have 2 arrows. So, you have your wings and your arrows. And so one is going to be the uphill growth path where we move more towards integration. This is basically saying we're going to be, healthier versions of ourselves, integrating these other numbers to create balance. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other is going to be the downhill stress path, where we're going to tend to move towards, it's going to be more the disintegration. But the
Mm-hmm.
key is going to be that the stress path is not failure. It's just a resource that helps us to see our patterns.
Yeah, I love that. I think it is so often framed like when someone goes into their stress number,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like, they're showing up in this really negative way. Well,
Yeah.
that can be the case, and that can be the default that you've learned to take that path when you are stressed about things going on in life. But if you can catch yourself and just remember, okay, like me as a 4, and that's easy for us to give ourselves as examples, but
Mm-hmm.
I can feel stressed and go to the low side of the Enneagram 2 and start to become prideful and complain about how nobody's helping me and feel very unloved and unseen and unheard, and make that about my worth and value, and just melt down.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can get regulated and I can find some grounding balance in my one arrow, which is, my growth arrow, in doing, um, and then visit back to the 2, but from a place of service and love to others, and it being less
Mm-hmm.
about myself, I can really use the best qualities of the 2, even though that's my stress number. So that is
Mm-hmm.
growing in security. And sometimes
Right.
um, the way that we'll talk a little bit more in a second about the traveling the path of the arrows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, just worth noting, when we are under stress, we often act in predictable ways. But by
Mm-hmm.
understanding our stress arrow, we can actually anticipate what our triggers are going to be in our behaviors. So, for example, like let's just say for a type 1 under stress, they're going to move to the unhealthy aspects of a 4. So they might become moody. They might become, dramatic or feel like a victim. When they notice this pattern, they can say, okay, I'm under stress. I am moving into my 4th space. So, what do I need to do to be able to get back to a healthier state? And just this awareness alone gives them the power to be able to choose something different. And you're doing it from more of a conscious response because you're aware of it now. And then you can take a totally different path. And that is
Mm.
what is going to create us to become, those healthier versions of ourselves.
Yes, yes, totally. Um, so it's really about learning to travel the path of the arrows with
Mm-hmm.
awareness, not just being dragged along by them. This leads to more comprehensive, like secure self understanding. It's
Mm-hmm.
about making the unconscious more conscious, which is just really, really brave work. Anybody who does this type of work with the Enneagram, it takes energy and it takes courage to show up for yourself in new ways that are unfamiliar. Um, it, and so having grace for yourself, knowing it's all new and it
Mm-hmm.
takes time to get good at it and to process information in new ways and use these new resources.
Yeah.
So I can say my arrows are so helpful, and as I've engaged healing work in general, that's been a really good one.
Yeah.
So as you think about your Enneagram 3, Tamara,
Mm-hmm.
like I wonder how the 6 shows up for you and the 9. I know
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes threes, when they move towards the 6 arrow, it looks like, leaning into those relationships to get advice, or like quickly,
Yeah.
I need to talk to somebody,
Yeah.
help me make these decisions. So lacking a little bit of the self-trust shows up,
Yeah.
even though, but it's their security arrow. So they're finding their people,
Yeah.
and there might be a little bit of that anxiety that comes out.
Yes. I
Um,
will definitely feel that. I will feel anxiety. I can feel it through my body. And
mhm,
my first natural instinct is to want to like talk to someone. That's my
mhm.
first thing. Like, so many people will go inward and retreat. I'm like, nope.
Yeah,
I need people. I got to
yeah,
be able to talk about this and process with someone. And I feel like that other person brings comfort just knowing that they're there and I'm not alone.
yeah. And that's such a healthy movement to security when
Hmm.
you take that arrow to your 6. And you
Hmm.
can just keep on going around the number and do 6, then go to the 9 after
Right.
that, once you've kind of gotten some of the 6 resources. Because when you go backwards and you go towards your stress number, which is the 9, oftentimes threes will report that they become, lethargic or procrastinating, or just like they
Hmm.
kind of lose that zest and that
Hmm.
drive that the 3 naturally has. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, I feel like that often. That would definitely be, yeah, if I'm in a stress response, I can, yeah, it's like, I feel like the 3 is just interesting because the 3 typically has so much like zeal for life and that like, success and wanting to be productive and all these things and purpose. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if I feel stuck, I will feel like I lack the motivation that normally is so natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost can just feel complacent and just like I don't even know like I feel like I need to grab a hold of something, but I don't even know what I have to grab a hold of. Like it's like you feel
Mm.
like it's like a weird feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's just that the sloth of the
Mhm.
9, as it meets your 3, it just slows you way down and you just get
Yeah.
kind of foggy
Yeah.
on what to do. And it's not
Mhm.
that you don't care, it's that the stress makes it hard to see what your options
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
So, but then the higher qualities of the nine, if, using those resources rather than slipping into comfort,
Mm-hmm.
um, the seeing others' perspectives, getting the opinions of a wide variety of people on the issue you're having stress with,
Yeah.
kind of combines that six and that nine as
Right.
resources for you. And so I see you
Right.
doing that in a healthy way. You're not anxiously running to people to like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You're more like, I want to get the opinions and perspectives of
Mm-hmm.
multiple people and not think that there's just one way to deal with this,
Yeah.
and finding your support and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it definitely
that's so
helps
good.
sort thoughts. It helps me like organize and sort my thoughts so that I can process it, and then I can actually come to more of a feeling like I'm making a good decision on something, of how I'm
Hmm.
going to go about something, or an action that I'm going to take.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, when I am using my one arrow to security, so that's like my natural way to go. Um, early years, I was not great at it. Like, I'm a very
Mhm.
ADHD, I used to not be organized at all. But as
Mhm.
I've grown and matured and really used the resources of the one, I've become very orderly. I mean, like, I really like to have a system and a
Mhm.
plan and a way to execute the doing. Because
Right.
before I had that, I was a classic doing repressed four that would just get stuck and like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I had to create tools and systems for myself that work for me and the way that my
Mhm.
mind works. And then, what I can see, like I mentioned with the two, when I get stressed, it's like, okay, it's not all about you. And I just need to kind of check my pride a little bit and
Mhm.
really look at the bigger picture of who all's involved, how they might be feeling, what they need, and get out of that self-referencing of the four, to
Mhm.
see everyone's needs, not just my own.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, we know that we didn't go through every number today, number by number. That's actually, we'll do that in future episodes. But we plan to just deep dive into every aspect of the Enneagram in only ways that will help you do your work. So this is just the start. This is the most important thing, though, is to remember that this isn't just a destination. This is journey. This is just learning how to have practice and awareness, and it is challenging, but it is also exciting when you start seeing growth, and it's just so worth it, for more of a
Mhm.
just a I feel like overall fulfilling life.
So I definitely, just in review, we talked about the nervous system and this idea of your window of tolerance and how a path to security would be to check your system and where you're at. Are you too hot? Are you too cold? Or what
Hmm.
do you need to get back to that just right, at home, regulated place? Um, Also, the instincts being a need for safety. So self-preserving, social, and one-to-one. Is one driving the show? Do you need to like explore the others to feel more balanced? And then we talked about the wings being our two resources right next to our number. So they're easy access, and just growing in both. And
Hmm.
the arrows being also that paths to find new resources and to explore new thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Hmm.
So, yeah, as a little homework from this episode, we'd love to just leave you with a question to reflect. Out of these four paths, which one feels like the most natural place for you to start exploring? So, don't try to do them all, just pick one. Just decide, I'm going to learn more about arrows and learn more about the arrows of my number and how to use them, and start there. And if you need help, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd love to help you on your journey. So, this was fun.
I know. I enjoy this. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And until
Yeah.
next time, May you be aware and open unto everything that comes to you today, welcoming it all for your transformation. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Transforming Us podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and that you found it helpful. If you loved what you heard, we would really appreciate if you would take a moment and leave us a 5-star review and rating. Your support helps us reach more listeners like you.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more relationship content. Then, if you're looking to take your growth to the next level, check out our coaching services and groups at transformingus.org.
We're here to help you transform your patterns and enjoy more secure relationships.
Until next time, in the words of Raoul Shane, you do not need to do big things. Just do small things in a big way. Then, transformation will follow.